Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Legal Tech Week. It's Friday, January 19th, 2024, and this is the show where we talk about the top stories in legal tech and innovation from the past week. My name is Bob Ambrogi. I write a blog called Law Sites and have a podcast called Law Next. And our other panelists this week, as you see arrayed before you here, I'll have them all introduce each other. Steve, why don't you kick it off?
Okay. Hey, I'm
Introduce
Steve
each
Embry.
other? Is that what I said? You
Yeah,
introduce
you
somebody.
did say
That would
that.
be fun.
So
You introduce somebody
who
else.
am I gonna introduce?
Take your pick.
Well, you can
I
do
better
yourself
stick.
this week. Well,
I better stick with myself so I
yeah.
don't screw something up. Steve Embry. I write the blog Tech Law Crossroads about legal innovation and legal technology, and I am in Louisville, where we have about 4 inches of snow on the ground, which was a bit of a surprise.
All right. And Victor.
Hi, everyone. Victor Lee, Assistant Managing Editor for the ABA Journal. We have a couple inches of snow on the ground, but it's much better than earlier in the week when it was like -7. And that was just temperature with like wind chill, it was like -20. So yeah, that was fun.
All right, Joe.
I'm Joe Patrice from Above the Law and Thinking Like a Lawyer podcast. I'm looking out. I think I got about 2 inches of snow coming. So not bad, but obviously still a challenge.
Yeah, and Gene.
I'm Jean O'Grady. I write the Dewey B Strategic blog and a monthly column for Legal Tech Hub. And I'm in Virginia, and we have gotten 3 to 4 inches of snow, and it hasn't stopped falling yet.
All right.
And I have envy of Stephanie's background. I want her to share that
awesome.
background.
I can. It's just a photo. I can send it to you.
It's
Since
great.
you asked it so nicely. Only you, though.
I thought that was your apartment wallpaper or something.
No, I mean, not yet.
On
Maybe
acid.
one day.
All right, Stephanie, why don't you?
Oh, yes. I guess I did introduce myself. I'm Stephanie Wilkins, Editor-in-Chief of Legal Tech News at ALM. And yeah, since we're all talking about snow, we're actually getting some in the city, and it's sticking for once. Not a ton, but it's actually sticking here for once.
All right, so
we have New York, if that wasn't clear. Sorry, everyone. City being New York.
Yeah. So we have this like spreadsheet that we all use to kind of put stories we're going to talk about every week for this show, and people pick stories of their own or others that they've read, and a lot of white space on the story on the story log this week, or people saying I don't really have that much to talk about, and I think it's got to at least partly be due to, I mean, there were stories this week, but nothing sort of earth shattering, I think, but it definitely got to be a little bit of the calm before the storm of Legal Week, as everybody gears up for Legal Week, and we are all getting deluged with emails asking us to meet with everybody and anybody and get briefings on this and that. And although, as Steve said, I don't know, the party invites are a little lacking so far this year. Maybe I'm missing something there. But
in that case, maybe I'm just not getting invited.
Yeah, well, right. Well, nor am I.
Like I can share those when I share my background with Jean. So
yeah, all right. But I know Steve, Stephanie, Joe. I know you're all going. Jean, are you going to Legal Week?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going. And Victor, do you go, or do you send somebody, or?
Sometimes we send people, but we're not actually. I mean, we have a personnel issue this year, so.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, it's a good place to advertise any job openings that you have right here. So I mean, I guess I just kind of wondered what people are thinking, expecting to see as we kind of gear up for next week. I've got like an abbreviated time there. I have to leave Tuesday night, and I've been like holding off on scheduling a whole lot of stuff because I'm kind of trying to figure out how I cram a whole lot of meetings into a very, very little amount of space before I have to take off. But what's everybody thinking? I mean, Stephanie, you've been I know you wanted to get away from this for an hour by joining us today, and instead I'm going to make you talk about it. But I mean, what are you looking forward to? What's the top of your mind when you're thinking about it?
This is good. I can try to not rant about the things. The internal storm has already started.
Well, you can vent. You can just kind of let it out.
No, it's good. There's just so much going on, so many moving pieces, and I mean, yeah, we're getting tons of requests. Obviously, thankfully, we have a four-person team, but like I'm actually slotted to speak more than usual this year, so I'm trying to take fewer of the meetings that were being offered because I just literally there are only so many places I can be at the same time. Um, yeah, I feel like there are announcements coming in, but not a ton that are, like you said, earth-shattering. And I'm just hoping that people aren't sitting on really, really big news and decide to tell us like next Thursday that it goes live Monday or next Friday that it goes live Monday. Um,
That'll
but
happen.
that always inevitably happens.
Yeah.
And yeah, some fun panels, some good. I mean, it's working a lot of it out. I guess I'm just going to be used. I'm a public speaker now. I did not realize that was really the case, but
You didn't sign up for that when you took the job.
but there we are for anyone who will be around on Thursday. I know it's the last day of the conference, but if I could pick favorites, my favorite panel that I'm going to be on is basically the one that is it's not a tech problem, it's a you problem, and it's an ethics credit about lawyer technology incompetence, and we're trying to figure out how to make it actually like fun. There might be some like gamification involved, but that's a nice way to end it. That would be my plug of the many things I'm doing that week.
That sounds good. That sounds like a good one. So I'm going to miss it. What about some of the others who are going? I mean, any thoughts of kind of what you're going to be looking for, what you're interested in, what you think is going to be good or bad?
Well, I mean, I'd like to hear use cases. And I think the last post generative AI conference I went to was almost entirely aspirational. We hope we'll be able to do something. And I am hoping that there's more substance and that people will be able to talk about things they've actually implemented because everybody wants something big to happen and everybody wants to be transformative, but how far people have actually gotten in terms of implementing things. And it was interesting because the story I highlighted this week is about the varieties of LLM models, which brought me, and when I finished thinking about it, it was like, how are law firms who everyone wants to be the most innovative, but how are we going to compete for the talent? And do we really want to be, it's the whole, once again, bespoke versus off the rack. And where are we going to end up with large language models? And how much are we going to build? And how much are we going to buy? And what's worth buying right now? So I think that's going to be the big topic.
One of the things that occurred to me as you were talking, Gene, and I noticed this last week. It, it seems like that a lot of the providers and vendors have sort of run off with generative AI products and sort of forgot there's other problems that are out there that could be solved. They may not be as publicity worthy as the generative AI stuff, but to the people that have the problems, if they could come up with some just practical solutions, that might be kind of cool and refreshing.
Well, I think it's also like the whole problem of the hype cycle. People's expectations have been ratcheted so high, and like somebody just posted, it takes time to develop, and this is really complex stuff. And there are some really serious ethical and other issues associated with large language models. So I think maybe it's just unrealistic, and maybe I'm unrealistic to think that we're going to have some dramatic transformative implementations, this quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I've just gotten.
Oh,
yeah, go ahead, Joe.
Oh, I was just going to say, and I actually am kind of interested in piggybacking off of that. Even if there is a plan for something revolutionary, the thing that I'm going to tick in my head is how many of these presentations we're going to see there will allow us to actually play with the thing versus have pre-recorded demos showing how great it probably could be, but we can't actually see how it works.
Yeah, and yes, and John Tredenick points out in the chat some products actually are alive and working, including Merlin, I guess. But
yeah, and sometimes the conversation of these guys is just like, boy, this is really cool. Look at this generative AI tool, and it's really cool, but they don't like, what does the product do? Like, well, that's sometimes I wish they just stop and say, okay, forget about this fact that we're using generative AI to do this, but this is what it can do for you.
Right. Yeah, this is part of the reason I've been, again, I'm leaving after only one day, so I don't have a lot of time for meetings, but I'm trying to be more selective. But as I go through the meeting requests I get, so many of the meeting requests are, you know, they're not even talking about a product. It's the old, let's get together at Legal Week and talk, because we haven't talked since the last conference we were all at, and there's no real agenda, there's no real product to talk about. And it is surprising how many releases we continue to get from vendors that keep talking about, here's what we're, as you were just saying, Gene, here's what we're going to be doing down the road. Here's our strategy around AI. Here's our thinking around AI. We think it's important and we need to do something. Thank you. I just don't need to waste my time sitting with you for an hour at Legal Week hearing about what you're not doing.
I'm personally curious to see, like, to walk through the vendor halls and see if there's like, if it's all the same names. I mean, I have these lists internally, I'm figuring it out, but like, who is new? Is a whole bunch of brand new startups? I'm actually working on, because I don't know if they usually publicize that, but thanks to AI, I got last year's list and this year's list and compared them, and it spit out a list of who is new. But it needs some refining, because like if something was like last year it just said Stephanie and this year it says Stephanie Inc. counts it as like two different things. So it's got to be a little parsing of it, but
I definitely think that's worth doing. I used to try and do that for AALL, and it was really helpful because a lot of small companies nobody knows who they are, and they do need highlighting. And I think that's a great thing to do.
Well, you're the reason I did it, Gene, because you asked me for that information last year, and I was like, we don't have it.
Oh,
so I made a
you
point of
got
doing it
this year, and you didn't send it to me.
Well, I did this last night, and I haven't refined the list yet. Like last night, I was watching TV and ran
That's
this.
okay. I'm joking.
But no, I'll send it to you with my background.
Picture. Yeah.
But no, you were the inspiration for that, Gene.
Yeah. Yeah.
You guys remember when I think it was Joop Stelzer used to do the word cloud for all the conferences?
Oh yeah.
From year to year, which would basically just take the agenda and feed it into one of those word cloud generators, and but it was always interesting because it would kind of give you a picture of what were the dominant themes at the conference, and for the longest time it was just like e-discovery and then everything else. And this year we all know what it would be in big letters. But
do they still have those like illustrators that they have, like people that are like there to draw like while the seminar is going on, and then they post it up? Do they still do that? Or?
Didn't Doug Austin do that most recently?
That's
the
what I
word
was going
cloud
to say
thing?
too.
Yeah, I kind of think he did one a little bit.
Oh yeah, Doug. That's right. Doug did it. The Illustrator ones, they had one at they had somebody doing that at that TLTF summit thing down in Florida.
Oh, the illustration ones live.
Illustrate the
Those are
presentations.
so good.
They draw whatever's Yeah, we
really cool.
like for a while I saw them everywhere. Like they were at Tech Show, they were at Legal Week, they were at Clio, they were at Avo, everywhere. And then I haven't seen them much recently, so that's why I was just kind of wondering.
Yeah. All right. Well, any other thoughts on Legal Week? I mean, one of the Steve, one of the topic you raised to talk about is maybe kind of related to this, because it's the issue of when does something how do you know when a new product coming out, whether in the legal tech space or elsewhere, is going to succeed or be a flop? And it was something I was kind of thinking about myself this week, relative to a podcast I did. The podcast wasn't really a particular hook for a story, but it happened to be that the founder of this law practice management company called Zencase was, again, one of these lawyers who looked for something in his practice, couldn't find it, decided he was just going to go out and build it himself, used it in his firm, built it up over a couple of years, then put it out there. And that kind of got me thinking about what makes legal tech products more or less successful, which is kind of what you wrote about, Steve. So do you want to talk a little bit about your thoughts on that? Or muted?
Do you want to share them with us, Steve?
Sorry, I'd plugged in the wrong input. A background of this was I bumped into this booth in Las Vegas, and it was called the Gallery of Flops, which was a pretty clever marketing ploy by this company that provides marketing consulting services to startups and others. But I talked to the founder of it, who was at the booth quite a bit, and it's you know, there's a lot of principles that they've identified that are applicable to the legal tech market, but it all kind of basically boiled down to people not understanding their customer, the customer in the sense of who is actually going to be using the product, not the IT department of a law firm or, you know, the marketing department, but the actual working lawyers. So that's one issue: is are you talking to the right people when you're doing surveys and doing pre-launch information? And then the other piece of that is knowing and understanding the customer, which gets to your point, Bob, is understanding what the real pain points are. One of the common threads with the gallery of flops is companies that produced a product that didn't solve any problem that anybody was having. And the thing that I'm thinking about is the Twitter phone that Twitter came out with, where you only thing it did was enable you to tweet. But we can do that with these, right? So it didn't really help anybody. And I
thought the Harley Davidson perfume was one.
Yeah, that was. I mean, that was a good one. Yeah,
You smell like a motorcycle? Is that what it is? Like what is that? What is that?
Well,
it smells like motor oil.
There was in New York, in Brooklyn recently, I don't know if I traveled around, they had the Museum of Failure that I went to, and a lot of it was electronics, not all of it, but it was all of these products that were either like, this doesn't do anything, or who even would have ever wanted this? There was like Colgate got into like frozen dinners, but it was like the toothpaste branded. Everyone was like, what is this?
Yeah. But the Harley Davidson cologne, I mean, that's nothing nowhere needs to be said about that one. Yeah. But to get to the point, I mean, I think we've all seen in the legal tech space where people come out with products that they don't understand what it is lawyers do enough to create a product that helps them, or legal professionals for that matter. And they don't, you know, a lot of times, and we used to see this a lot, we maybe see it a little less now, they don't understand the business model of their customers. They don't understand that, like, we lawyers bill by the hour, right? So every minute you have to spend learning how to use a piece of technology is money out of your pocket. Right? I mean, you know, you could be doing billable stuff, and then you could go get your billable hour quota done, and then you could go home. So, you know, they came out with a lot of complicated products. I used to walk through the exhibit halls and see all this stuff where you have to click here and click there and click there and click here and click there. And now you have to answer like, we're not going to do that shit. You know, it's too complicated. We have to be easy because that's the way we function. And then, you know, to your point, Bob, I mean, you know, a lot of even the companies that come out that are founded by lawyers, particularly young lawyers, they don't quite grasp, okay, how do you sell a product to a law firm? Because they've never been in the upper echelons of management to understand how those decisions are made. And so they get bogged down with no answers. One of the points that the founder of this pre-launch company made was, you know, you have to talk to the right people within the company and base your launch decisions or development decisions on what they tell you, not what somebody that's not making the decision and not using the product will tell you. And the other point that I came to is, since it's kind of a catch-22 as I was thinking about it, is, you know, a lot of these tech companies will come out with a prototype, and then they have this group of lawyers that they give it to that sort of test it and make comments and all of that, which is all well and good, but like the people that will really ultimately use the product are, you know, mainly busy lawyers. And if they're busy lawyers, they don't have time to do these little surveys to come up with the answers. So the whole thing is kind of skewed. But so yeah, it was interesting talking to this guy. He's got some real different theories about how you do product surveys. You don't pay people to do the surveys. You ask them to invest a small amount in the product in exchange for getting a discount on the ultimate product if it comes out, which is kind of an interesting approach, I thought. But a lot of lessons there for legal tech, I think.
Yeah, that was an interesting approach. I was couldn't make up my own mind about whether people would actually do that. I assume they have people doing that,
Yeah.
actually paying in order for
When
the
he first
opportunity to
told me,
review.
when he first described it, I thought that doesn't make any. Then he showed me how it works, and he showed me a scooter, like a scooter you would ride, motorized scooter that a company was coming out with, and so your option was you could contribute $100, and in return, if the product came out, you would get a $200 discount. And so in exchange for doing, providing this commentary, and it was pretty instructive when you looked at the comments, because they would suggest, the color is wrong, or the pedal needs to be here, or the kickstand needs to be there. And a lot of those changes were actually incorporated in the product that made it a more sellable product. And so it was actually, I think it's, pretty neat demonstration. I don't know about it either, but it was a unique approach. We'll say that.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
the
there've been
one thing
so.
I would,
Go ahead, Gene.
I was going to say, the one thing I would say in the legal market is that I feel like people develop products without knowing what's already on the market. And that's really problematic, because if you come in and you're a tiny person,
Right.
a small company, and you've got a product that is largely overlapping, that's something that's already installed, you don't want to be going to that. The largest law firms may not be your right market, but small law firms and solos, that might be the right place to focus. And I feel like a number of different things go sideways, where they're focusing on the wrong niche in the market, and they also
Right.
don't know what else is out there. And I am always shocked at how little people who are pitching products to me don't understand their competitors.
Right. Well, they don't understand that the legal market is really segmented, right? I mean,
Right.
the AmLaw 100 needs are completely different than a AmLaw 300 law
Or
firm
solo
needs, or a
practitioners.
plaintiff's law. Yeah,
Right.
I mean, because you're talking about apples and oranges, and you try
Right.
to adopt something to across the board, it's really hard.
But so that's where I debated in my own mind whether products that are first uh, ideated, if that's the word, by lawyers are more likely to succeed or not. Whether that really makes any difference, and I realize the answer is a lawyer's answer of it. It depends on a lot of factors. But I've heard so many stories, over the years that I've been writing about tech, uh, so many times that I've talked to somebody who, that's their story. They were a lawyer, they were in practice, they looked for something to solve some pain point they had in their practice, couldn't find it, or if they did find it, they didn't think it did a very good job of it. And so they went out and started their own company. And, obviously in some cases those have been successful. In other cases, I think they haven't been. And I think when they haven't been, it's generally more because their need wasn't really a market need, that they might have had some very specific need in their practice, but there wasn't really something that was going to be broadly adopted, or that they just didn't know how to execute on what it was they wanted to
Right.
build. And
But
Yeah,
in
that's what I
some
think.
places, oh, sorry, you go ahead, Stephanie.
No, go ahead, Gene.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, there have been spectacular successes, and Case Tech's most, I think dramatically invented entirely new classes of research activity, like site checking. I mean, all the big providers they had the means, they had the data, and they never saw the opportunity to create something like a site checker. And I think I once measured the time between Case Tech's was something like 6 years. It was 6 years before every other large vendor had come up with a brief checking product. So I think it's partly, there's some level of magical creativity that understands technology enough to understand how technology can be a lever and solve problems in a new way. And I would say the same thing with IntelliGize. The fella who, he had been a corporate lawyer someplace in New York, and he came up with these amazing algorithms to help solve the problem of of going through no action letters. I mean, very specific, but also a deadly time waste for lawyers, you know? So I have seen great successes.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
you
kind
know,
of what I was
fast.
gonna say
Go
too. I
ahead.
mean, like I know like by lawyers for lawyers was all the rage for a while there, but I think it can't be just lawyers and it can't be just technologists, or rarely can it be. Like you need the lawyers that understand the lawyer problems because a lot of times pure technologists don't, but also pure lawyers that aren't technologists. Like the case text guys are they're technologists too, you know, so they sort of can straddle both sides. You can have lawyers with a great idea, no idea of how to execute it. So you sort of I think the perfect meld is having both of those aspects in the same product. And I cut you off, Steve. I'm sorry.
No. I was just gonna mention Fast Case, and Ed and Phil did exactly what you described, Bob. I mean, they were sitting in their office working one night, and they said, "Well, this sure sucks to have to do it this way." And from that, they spawned a huge company. But the other thing I was going to say, to go back to the point, the problem with some of the younger lawyers that get into this, when they have to market their product, they 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 start meeting with IT people, and they mistakenly believe that IT people are going to can make the decision. So when you look at their promotional material and their product descriptions, it's kind of geared toward IT. What they don't realize is the IT person, who is often a kind of a nerdy person in the law firm, then has to go up to the senior partner and say, "Look at this product," and out comes all this gibberish, and the guy's partner's going, What are you talking about? You know, I don't understand it." And since there's a disconnect between the partner who makes a decision and the actual person that came up with the product, I think that can be a real problem.
And look, sometimes it doesn't matter how good your product is, right? I mean, everyone. One thing I didn't see on the gallery of flops was the Betamax. Everyone swears the Betamax was better than the VHS, but VHS won. And it's like that. And with lawyers too, it's like there are lots of programs out there that are better than Microsoft Office, that they could use, but they're all wedded to Microsoft, or not all of them. Some of them still use WordPerfect, but like some things are just like either they're so ingrained, or it's going to take a lot to get that kind of disruption that no matter how good a product that you have, and sometimes it's just not going to make the impact. That means doesn't mean you shouldn't try, but you also have to be careful of the fact that, okay, look, sometimes no matter how great your efforts are, how good your product is, it just might not make the impact that you think it will.
It was in the Museum of Failure. I found a virtual edition of that online with a tech page. I'm just gonna share that to everybody just for fun.
So it's funny because I just, as we were talking about this, I remembered that I wrote a story last year on the greatest flops in legal tech that I'm looking at, but I never published it. It's sitting in my blog. And I originally wrote it for another publication that asked me to write it, and then when I wrote it, they said, "Well, we can't run that because those are advertisers of ours." So
you can share it among friends, Bob.
Well, I'm going to publish it now. I'm going to publish it. But I mean, number one on my list was Atrium. I mean, I think possibly that was one of the biggest crashes and burns in the legal tech space ever. That was the one with Justin Kahn, the Silicon Valley sort of wonderkind who had developed Twitch and sold it for a whole lot of money, and then decided that even though he had a bad experience with some lawyers, so he was going to come in and introduce a platform that solved all the problems of legal services delivery in the world, and happened to do basically a complete repeat of ClearSpire, which had been a previous failure in the legal tech world, and it kind of punches all the buttons of not really understanding the legal market, not doing the market research to see what had happened before, and he made a big splash. He raised some big money for a while, and then all of a sudden disappeared. I don't know what are some other what would be on your list of like the biggest flops of legal tech?
I have to see who's on the call.
I
don't want to insult anybody who's actually listening in.
We're an equal opportunity insulter here on this show.
Well, I'll say something. A product which shall remain nameless did a lot of self-promotion and it was not, and went to the IT department to sell it and made all sorts of ridiculous claims about how good it was at solving research problems. And if there had been a librarian in the room, the conversation would have been very short. End of story.
I think that's on my list too. Any other nominees? Okay.
Yeah, I
All
don't
right.
know.
Yeah.
I was just going to say the company involved in my thing is by no means a flop because it's one of the biggest companies in the world, but they did pitch me once on I think 10 years ago they pitched me on we're a couple years away from being able to map individual lawyers' brains so you could get a license to that. And I was like, no, 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 you aren't. What the hell are you even talking about? So that was, and they were like, oh, and you'd be able to get a license. That's like putting aside that I don't think you can do that. There's no way in hell any state
But wait a
regulatory
minute,
board or bar
isn't
is going.
Elon Musk working on that?
Oh, I'm sure he is. Well, somewhere, but he's doing that instead of making sure that his cars don't catch fire or
Well, they're
Twitter
not even
doesn't catch
starting in
fire.
the cold, Joe.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
I have a
Well, he's
I
also
have a
making sure people
hybrid,
don't use.
so
He's also making sure people don't use cis on Twitter these days.
yeah, yeah.
What was My Robot Lawyer? I don't even remember that one. Somebody mentioned that in the chat.
No, someone just
several in the chat.
WordPerfect can't be a flop because lawyers in court still use that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean,
Well, I mean, I guess one of the ones that would classify as a flop that really became a flop, didn't start out being a flop, and that's BlackBerry. I mean, it was every lawyer had a BlackBerry for years and years and years, and yet, despite that commanding lead in the marketplace,
Has anyone seen
didn't
that movie yet?
Yes, it's
I
excellent.
missed it. Oh,
No.
is it?
I saw it.
It
It's
looked like it
excellent.
was going to be good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a
I'm
good
only
show.
finally
Yeah.
getting to the Theranos one, so I'm way behind on his movies.
Seen what? I missed it all.
Blackberry.
Oh, the Blackberry
There's a
movie.
there's a
Yeah.
there's
But
a
I did
movie
see the
of
Theranos one.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
that's
very
very good too. Mhm.
But they were
Yep.
just saying that someone was just saying in the chat. I mean, I missed who it was. I went by, but that they're now basically reintroducing. Somebody released a thing that reintroduces like the click technology from
The
BlackBerry for iPhone.
clicks.
Oh,
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, have you seen it? I mean, you take your phone and it kind of comes up, makes it, that much bigger,
longer.
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you can actually, it's a keyboard, you can actually type on it.
I
mean,
still
it's-
miss my flip phone.
I just miss
I mean,
phones that actually
it's
didn't die in a couple hours.
I
My
miss
old
phones.
phones used to last a week with
I
battery.
miss phones that would fit in your pocket.
The bold thing that I saw today, which is not necessarily legal but could have ramifications, since we're talking about BlackBerry. BlackBerry's got replaced by the fact that we could have another device that did more things and what BlackBerry did. I saw it. Anybody tracking this like Rabbit release? Apparently, this is a company that's selling a new device that would like replace your phone or whatever. But the goal of it is it has an AI built in so that instead of navigating apps and stuff like that, it's prepared to just take your natural language request and start doing it. The theory being that the way of the future is you'd have a device that you could just be like, play this song now, answer this phone now, yada, yada, or type it or whatever. And I was like, that's interesting. I could see, much like the BlackBerry, where you didn't think there was ever going to be a way in which that wasn't going to be the primary legal tool. I could see somebody else figuring out, like, well, if we just do it this different way, then we can get around all that. I don't know if this is it, but I think there may be something to changing the concept of how the user interface works.
Didn't they just sell a ton, though? I mean, aren't they just like totally flying off the shelves?
Yeah.
And it just came out. Yeah.
Yeah, it just was like, I only read about it like earlier today.
Yeah.
Well, isn't that also, I mean,
well, just this past week, I don't know if anybody saw the Samsung presentation. They're introducing a lot of AI features to their new Galaxy phone, including one that I thought was really pretty cool. It was a translation service, so I can speak English into the phone, and if whoever I'm talking to speaks Spanish, they will hear Spanish on their end, and you can do the same thing with texting, which I thought, I'm not sure I have a lot of use for it, but I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, and isn't that sort of the promise of sort of conversational AI in tech broadly? Is, you know, the idea that you're not going to be sitting there interfacing with your software by pressing buttons and dragging and dropping and whatever else. You're just going to be kind of talking to your software and saying what you want to get done and having it do it for you.
But Bob, do you remember we were at a meeting at the Lexus headquarters, I think, in New York a couple of years ago, where West was talking about rolling out, you know, I guess it was conversational AI before that was a term. And they said they did testing and lawyers didn't like it and they stopped developing it.
Oh, the Lexus thing. Yeah.
Yeah, remember?
They were going to have well, they were talking about chatbots, actually. They were talking about
Right, yeah,
a chat interface to Lexus,
yeah.
which seems so quaint right now. But yeah, I do remember that.
And I've been thinking about that because because all of these new AI things are all just because it's the default. They're all like designed as a chatbot kind of interface, and I'm like, it. I guess they're banking on the fact that now with ChatGPT and stuff, lawyers are going to be used to that interface in their real lives. But yeah, it seems like an unnatural way to do legal research to me because I'm old. But my position is like that's not a conversation that is a legal research conversation, and the UI should look more like what I think research should look like. But
Yeah.
Right. And is the answer gonna spit out the flags? How is it gonna
yeah,
tell you your case is overturned? You know?
yeah, like I mean that way back then, the conversational thing, it really was that it seemed janky for a lawyer to be like talking like to a weird, basically like a answer, like one of those automated phone trees to get things like, how can I help you today? It's like, that's not how you do these things. But now people seem more comfortable with it. I don't know. Bring back word slash within five slash in
I
the same paragraph exclamation point. I'm all ready.
I actually like that sort of stuff. You know what else came to mind? Remember the Microsoft dancing clip or something? What was
Clippy,
that thing?
Clippy.
Clippy.
The Clippy?
Yes.
You mean Copilot?
No, it was like a paper
Because
clip that danced across your screen.
oh,
I
I
was just
know.
talking
I
about
used to,
Clippy with a vendor this morning when they were telling me about this new thing they're going to have on their program. And I said, that sounds like Clippy.
I mean, Copilot.
But it's AI generated, so it's better.
Every description I hear of Microsoft Copilot, I'm like, you mean Clippy? Because that's what it all sounds like to me.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Good
Clippy
old
might have been
Clippy.
great. They just made it annoying. Did
Right,
anyone not turn it off? It was just like in
right.
your
I did.
face when you didn't want it.
I
Yeah.
didn't. Eventually, they had different avatars for it, and I switched my avatar to something else. I can't remember what it was. Yeah, yeah, you can take it. Yeah, so yeah.
Yeah,
In the comments, other people did it too.
different.
But
All right,
didn't
so
Clippy just came with a product? They weren't going to charge you a bazillion-dollar upgrade like they are for other things.
Right.
Oh yeah, it was just part of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. So talking about products that are likely to succeed or fail, I for some reason keep thinking about Victor's story this week, where talking about AI generated music mashups. And if somebody had said to me, if you're going to take an AI generated mashup of a Snoop Dogg rap with the Jungle Book song, The Bare Necessities, I would probably say that's not bound to be very successful.
Oh really? I
And
think
yet
that sounds wildly successful.
okay. Well, see, that's why I'm not a music critic. But overall, an interesting. Victor, you want to talk about the context for what's going on there?
Yeah, so yeah, basically it's what Bob said. It was like, people are using AI, well, maybe musicians, music producers, DJs, whatever, and whatever. They're using, I mean, mashups are nothing new. I mean, they're like people have been mixing music together for a while. Like the big example was like someone sampled like the White Album, Beatles' White Album with like a Danger Mouse. Oh well, no, it was the White Album with
Jay-Z's Black Album.
Yeah, Jay-Z's Black Album, and yeah, so
it's Danger Mouse, yeah.
Together, and then yeah, but now it's a lot easier to do that, and you don't have to have like sophisticated equipment or whatnot. You can just and you can do that with AI, and but there are all kinds of ways that you can like you can impersonate people's voices. So like you get like Eminem reciting Shakespeare sonnets, or you have like like Snoop Dogg like reciting like country lyrics or something, and then or Disney lyrics or whatnot, and they're fun. They're some of them even go viral and do and get a lot of views and listens. But the question is whether it's legal, because obviously there's and this ties into this the wider controversy regarding AI and the limits of fair use and parody and various other avenues that have traditionally shielded these kind of things. It's like if AI creates if AI creates it, is it copyrightable? If it's not created by a human, is it copyrightable? If someone's using this kind of stuff to then train the algorithm, is that plagiarism? Is that violating copyright? So there's all kinds of gray issues to it, and there hasn't really been a whole lot of actual case law, probably because the technology is so new, but it'll probably come. And I think the one saving grace is that like right now it's like there's not a lot of money in these mashups. Like there's not a lot of I mean like these artists aren't like selling them like and making a ton of money. They're just putting them online and monetizing it that way. So record labels don't necessarily see a point to like challenge these people in court, but at some point someone's going to figure out how to monetize it and figure out how to make money off it, and then it'll go into the courts. But it kind of just shows sort of like what the limits of like the limits of existing IP law, and how AI is sort of kind of moving into some gray areas that aren't necessarily covered by the existing case law, and it'll be interesting to kind of see where it goes.
So I read this story I read this story this morning, and I thought it was great and very interesting. And there are a couple of experts quoted in there. There's like a law professor who's like, actually, the way AI works, this shouldn't be a problem at all. And then there was an expert who was like, not only is this a problem, it's a problem before it even gets on the internet because of blah 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 blah. And I'm like, who would possibly say that? And it was the person from the RIAA, who apparently, this will shock you, the RIAA thinks this is a problem. I mean, the RIAA thinks that the actual artists themselves singing the song are a problem. So, of course, they're mad about it.
I always like to point out that we wouldn't have half of our English literature if it weren't for copyright violation, because all of Shakespeare was sitting there cutting apart other people's plays and creating new characters from other people's plays. I mean, it's all derivative. Art is derivative.
Who's the guy that he works for maybe VLX or somebody, but he actually sat down. Yeah, that's right. He actually sat down and they took every conceivable combination of notes to make a melody. I think up to 6, 7, 10 notes, and there's a finite number, right? Because there's only, like the alphabet, there's 26 letters or however many, but there's 10 notes, 8 notes. I can't. So it's a finite way to combine these, and he actually got this grid of all the combinations, and there's not many spaces left for a new melody to be created. I'm not sure exactly what all that means for copyright, but it was pretty fascinating discussion.
Well, he's been trying to assemble every.
Schoenberg, it's 12, and Schoenberg would say that you could have to use all of them. That's a classical music joke. Anybody in the audience? All right, fine.
But he's literally been trying to go through and classify every possible melody and copyright every one of those melodies, so that he can then put them out into the public space, so that in theory no music could ever be copyrighted again. So if I understand that right, and if Damien's in the audience or not, he can correct me. I probably got that wrong, but he's done like TEDx talks on this and stuff. And
it's really a fascinating concept, and I think his argument is because because there's such a limited number of ways you can create a melody. If you apply copyright too strictly to it, I mean,
Right.
there'll never be anything new in music, right? So
Yeah.
Well,
you can argue the point, but
I mean, yeah,
it's
there is, well, and that's sort of the whole. I mean, that was one of the trends for a while. It's just like, especially, I mean, it's different in like classical music or even avant-garde music or whatnot, or if you consider that music. But like for popular music, there really are like only like a certain, because you're only going to use certain like major chords. You're not gonna. I mean, if you have a minor chord, like there's still certain. You're not going to mix them together. It's going to be like you have your major chords here, and then if it's a sad song, you put your minor chords in, and it's just like, and then you're not going to do like any like complicated time signatures or anything like that. So there's really only like a certain number of melodies that you can even have that would make a good song. And like I think, oh, um, I think there was for a while it's well, I mean, like Taylor Swift had a song that like her chord progression was like a little bit similar to "I'm Too Sexy," but it was such a common melody. But because she didn't want to get sued, she like threw Right Said Fred like like a writing credit, which I'm sure made them very happy that they could W2 that year. But yeah, I mean, especially for popular music, there really are going to be only like a certain number of combinations you can use, and like and if you're associated with a certain style, like you've made that sort of like your like Chuck Berry with the way like his chord with the way he would like structure riffs or whatever. If you play like a similar style, then you're probably going to get sued.
Joe, you have something growing on your shoulder.
Famous.
Yeah,
I think you need an introduction, Joe.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Francesca LaRue here. Yeah.
hello.
She's been a little sick this week, so
Oh,
she can't be like put in the to relied upon to play like usual. So I've got to like make sure she's not coughing.
Let's hope it's his baby, somebody said in the audience.
I don't think bourbon qualifies as a pediatric medication, by the way, Joe. might help the cough. But
My grandmother used to give me bourbon when I was sick when I was a kid.
Yeah, I was gonna say our parents'
Me too.
generation did stuff like that all the time.
Yeah.
Hot lemonade
hot
and
toddy.
bourbon was very good. Yeah.
Yeah, bourbon on the gums to like deal with teething. Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, on the topic of Damian Real, it's like this guy is like the ever ready bunny of the legal tech world. I mean, not only is he doing the whole music thing and doing TEDx talks, but he's the one who's developing the whole Sally standards,
that's right.
Essentially almost single-handedly. I mean, he's too modest to say that, but he's been the one who's really been doing the yeoman's share of the work on that, and he's got a day job at
Right.
VLEX Fastcase.
It's a pretty amazing guy.
And he's a father and husband and everything else, and a musician as well. He's crazy. I don't know. He gets all his time and energy.
And he's really one of the most gracious people I know. I mean, he's always open to chat and friendly and pleasant. And
yeah. Gene, you mentioned earlier you had a kind of a couple of stories you highlighted this week, neither of which were yours, which is
right.
okay.
There was nothing to write about this week.
Yeah. But do you want to talk about one or either or both of those?
Yeah, so I came across this one story that talked about, well, it posed the question, what's the best generative AI model for legal professionals? And basically, of course, there's no answer to that. But the author, and it was on law.com, Rees, how do you say that?
It's Reese Diption. Yeah, that was my team.
Yeah. So Stephanie's team, I should probably let Stephanie talk about it.
No,
but
it
he just goes through all the different ways that the different strengths of the different models, and how everybody sort of agrees that GPT-4 is best for drafting, but lots of the large language models are good at summarization, and there's no overall consensus. And then it comes down to that they have to be adapted to specific use cases. And so I guess that's what brought my thinking. I mean, I thought it was a really interesting article. It was short, but it really went into the different kinds of trade-offs people are going to have to think about, because GPT-4 is so popular, it's slower than other platforms. And so you have to look at speed versus cost and how easy it is it to modify. And so I just think for somebody who's looking for an introduction to the issues, if they're going to approach a GDP product or large language model products in their firm, it's almost like a good checklist. And then it has like a link to another place where there's like an interactive chart of the different models and what they're good at and who they're produced by. So I just thought it was a really interesting little read. So I'll put that in the. Oh, you already put it in.
Well, that's the infographic that he put in. I don't know if it's the full article, but yeah, I mean, I had seen the infographic in the works, and I knew Reese was working on the article, but until I read it before it went up and edited it, I didn't know the extent it went into. And I mean, it really is good. And I mean, it doesn't hurt that he got full range to pick the brain of Mike Bomarito, who is, in my opinion, one of the smartest people in the industry when it comes to the super techie stuff. So no, it's really good. I thought he did a fantastic job with it.
And I think the other thing it reminds me of is like law firms are really going to be in a dilemma to compete for talent. I mean, it's like, the whole thing is, is generative AI going to take your jobs? Just managing generative AI is going to be a job. There's going to be so many new challenges coming out of this.
For real, yeah.
Yeah. And I think for the first time in our chat, we've had a comment, "What a little pumpkin," which I'm not sure which of us they're talking about, but I appreciate it. There was also, Gene, you had also highlighted in our little story log I was talking about before, this interview with Oz Benamram, which I thought was really interesting. And the one part of it that jumped out at me was when he was talking about the idea that we're all talking about large language models, but he thinks that the most significant development in 2024 will be the introduction of the not that large language models. And I thought that was an interesting take. Yeah. I mean, we're all kind of already hearing that in terms of, people starting to use RAG and more models where they're able to kind of focus on their own collections and content. But the really kind of key legal specific applications of this technology are, I like that description, the not that large language models.
Yeah, and he talks about the ongoing roles and importance of knowledge management professionals, because most law firms haven't even cleaned up their data yet. So you can't use your internal data until it's cleaner. And you can apply new technologies after you solve some more basic problems. So I think that's where knowledge managers are really playing an important role in helping firms take the preliminary steps and get their data and their documents ready for large language models or smaller language models.
You mean AI hasn't killed KM, Gene? I thought that's what everyone was saying.
Not yet. All right. Well, Joe, does your daughter have anything she wants to say?
Hi, Frankie.
Yeah, I don't know. No, she didn't. Now that I got dancing fruit going. Oh, there you go. You made a sound. The YouTube, it's like this. I assume like AI, almost AI generated. It's like little fruit that just jump around really slowly. Absolutely mesmerizing for the kiddo. Like,
it
she's
really does
staring
look.
at it now.
I've looked at it. It looks like something that someone did on like an acid trip, but children love it.
Oh yeah, yeah. I feel like that's what most baby things are, acid trip driven. Like Teletubbies, this, like everything that's ever been good for a baby is some weird, like slow acid trip issue. I'm going to show her 2001 here in a minute.
All right. Right before
Maybe
don't let her get into like Blippi or like, that's the worst.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I need to get more of this intel from people who've been ahead of me.
And put a little magic mushroom into her bottle.
Also an option. Do you want that? No. Yeah.
All right. Well, anything else anybody wants to raise before we wrap it up for the week? If not, we will all be back here. Well, I don't know if we'll all be back here. Some of us will be back here next Friday with the pre-legal week jitters at their peak, and hope to see you all back then. Hope everybody has a good week till then.
Thanks.
Have a
Enjoy
good
the
weekend.
snow.
Bye.